Well, I've been interested in being an entrepreneur for many years and had actually started a company on the side, but that didn't pay the bills. So by day, I was working for a big company, and all of a sudden two things happened. One is the company moved. I was living in San Francisco at the time, commuting about an hour. The company moved to the south, and now I had to commute an hour and 20 minutes. And simultaneously, my wife got pregnant and progressively got more pregnant. And all of a sudden, I found myself with a massive commute, an 8-month pregnant wife, and an entrepreneurial dream that was very much at risk. And we decided to take a chance. And so quite literally, on the day my wife went into labor with child number 1, I left my job to start a new company. Now that was exciting, but it was very daunting because we needed to raise money. We had a general concept that sat at the intersection of small business, financial services, and the internet. But we didn't have any funding. We didn't have any experience in knowing how to go about getting funding. Well, pretty early in the process, I was introduced to one of the more prominent angels in Silicon Valley, angel investors, who had a network of angel investors that he frequently invested it with. I met with them, and there was immediate interest. But very soon, we were asked a difficult question, and there were two of us, business partners, Scott and I, and the question we were asked was, which of us would be the CEO? We didn't know how to answer the question because we had regarded one another as simply business partners. We were doing this business together. We had spoken about doing a business together for several years. And so my initial answer was, we're just partners. And the response I got was that that wasn't acceptable in the context of Silicon Valley. There needed to be a CEO. So Scott and I looked at each other, and we basically spontaneously decided Scott would be the CEO. He was 16 years older than I was. It seemed like a reasonable choice, and we volunteered that. The investors' reaction was, okay, that sounds fine. One of the first things we're going to need to do, once the money goes in, is figure out who's going to really be the CEO on an ongoing basis. And we said, well, wait a minute, time out. Scott is the CEO. And he said, well, I don't really see Scott as a long-term CEO. So Scott and I took this away and talked about it. And here we were, we had a general business concept. We had a PowerPoint presentation. There was no real business. We had had this idea of doing a business together for 3 years. And now all of a sudden, before the business really started, we're about to accept somebody's money, and contingent upon that, the idea that somebody else who we haven't even met is going to be the CEO. That didn't make a lot of sense. And so what we decided is that we'd push back on it. And Scott needed to push back on it specifically because we had positioned him as the CEO. So we had another meeting with the investor, and Scott said, nicely, I thought, we're concerned about this approach. Investor got quickly offended. The meeting ended. He left in a huff, and it appeared that the entire discussion had broken off. A couple hours later, I got a phone call effectively summoning me to the investor's house. And here's what he said. It was the classic Faustian bargain. He said, Mike, respectfully, we think Scott is an asshole. And we're not prepared to invest money in that context. But we would invest money if you were the CEO and you dropped Scott.